Hello! We're back with part 2. So you remember how I said that I wanted this video to just be 2 parts, the last part and this part, and I didn't want it to be 3 parts? It's gonna be 3 parts. We're gonna be handling all of the level 1 feats in this video, and then every other feat is going to be in the next video. I continue to be appreciative of the comments that come even a whole week after the videos are uploaded that help teach me all of the things that I were missing or just didn't understand in the videos that have been uploaded so far. So thank you. Thank you very much. Please keep them coming. Every comment continues to help the video. And if you really do want to help the video, the best way to do that is to subscribe, to like, to do those comments. If you don't know what you want to comment, just leave a comment that says hi, and I'll say hi back. Or you could tell me what you want to see next. Anyway, this is a really weird series for me because as I'm learning, I'm also creating the content. A lot of it is initial first reaction that I'm just writing down or reading for the first time and then just filming my reactions to. But a lot of times I'll find myself in a situation where I've already recorded my reaction in some way, shape, or form, but then I will later find out what the actual answer to a question I pondered is. And I kind of want this to be a journey where we learn together. So even though I know, I'm still gonna record it as if I don't have that knowledge. I didn't understand if I was getting these features every single level or if they worked like Eldritch Invocations, where at specific levels you were granted it and these feats were just a pool to choose from. All I knew is that you got them at some cadence and at some point, and if you got 20 of them, it would kind of be crazy. I've also noticed that there are traits to every single one of these feats, and I have no idea how the traits come into play. There's the dwarf trait, uncommon, common, divine. Those are the ones that I can remember off the top of my head, but I don't know why they exist. They all seem pretty self-explanatory. The only guess that I've been able to come up with is that maybe these features sort of work as just flat things that you can apply to magic items. And so maybe those traits have some sort of correlation to the price. So if something has the dwarf trait, you just slap on 50 gold to the price, but if it's uncommon, you also slap on 200. So an uncommon dwarf magical item is just 250 gold. Granted, those are all arbitrary numbers, but that's how my head works for what these traits are. Otherwise, I don't know why they're here or what they mean, outside of maybe helping to organize Archives of Nethys. But that'll do it. We're just gonna jump in now. Avenge in Glory. Frequency, once per day. Trigger, an ally within 30 feet gains the dying condition. You honor your ally's life, gaining temporary hit points equal to your level for 1 minute. As long as you have these temporary hit points, you gain a +1 circumstance bonus to attack and damage rolls. So immediately upon reading this, I noticed that this also had a trigger, and I missed the frequency bit. So I was like, wow, this would be really overpowered if it was just all the time. And then I noticed that the frequency was once per day, which leads me to believe that I was correct. There are going to be frequencies in some instances that tell you how many times the trigger can be activated, but without a frequency, it's just happening all of the time. And I'm sure that a lot of people have commented on the previous video, which I haven't even released yet at the time of recording this, to tell me what trigger is and how it works in tandem with frequency. And just know that even past Jack, before you exist, appreciates you and your comments. As for the feat itself, it seems pretty cool. Granted, 1 temporary HP isn't that great, and it probably doesn't get great until it just kind of does. I feel like the numbers in Pathfinder are going to be arbitrarily big by level 20, so maybe even 20 temporary hit points isn't much, but any temporary hit points is kind of a cool thing. Single digit numbers, even on the lower side of things, seem to play a really big part in Pathfinder, so even a +1, +2, +5 to your temp HP could be the difference between life and death. Either way, I'm still a huge fan of the scale, the fact that it scales, and just scale in general in Pathfinder. I would like to see that the +1 circumstance to attack and damage also go up, maybe not as exponentially, like at level 10 it's a +2 instead. That would be cool. Or like other feats, maybe a feat that sort of this leads into, and that thing that it leads into sort of buffs the damage at the very least.
Clan's Edge. Prerequisites. Trained in clan daggers. By moving your clan dagger with rapid precision, you can protect yourself more effectively. Make 2 clan dagger strikes against different targets. Your multiple attack penalty applies normally to these strikes. You then use the interact action to gain the +1 circumstance bonus to your AC from your clan dagger's parrying trait. Clan's Edge leads to Protective Sheath.
I'm gonna nitpick a little bit here because the overspecificity confuses me just a tad. This is by no means important, but for whatever reason, this tells you that you need a clan dagger prerequisite, which as a dwarf feature, all dwarves get clan daggers. So why would you need that prerequisite if you're already getting clan daggers? It just seems to be super redundant, and I don't understand why. I might be reading too much into it. Maybe that means that other races can dip in to these feats somehow. Maybe just this feature can be put to a magic item. Maybe it has something to do with the half-human and versatile heritages. Maybe those don't get clan daggers, so if you were like a tiefling dwarf, you wouldn't get clan daggers, and so you couldn't take this feature. Getting into the nitty-gritty of the feature is where I do start to feel like my lack of knowledge and general understanding of Pathfinder as a whole is starting to become a little bit of a pain in the ass. What's an interact action? Is an interact action a full action? Is it a free action? I don't get it, because it's telling me that I have to make 2 strikes, which are 2 actions, and then I use an interact action in order to get the parry bonus. But the parry bonus in and of itself is an action. So what? No matter what, this is 3 actions. Am I doing attack, interact, or attack, action? Or like, I don't get it. Like logically, this is telling me that it has to be 2 actions to do all 3 things. Otherwise, what the fuck is the point of this feature? It doesn't make any sense. Future Jack is here to say there's a little 2-action icon at the top of the Clan Edge title, which makes me think that I'm right. Although it's still worded very poorly in that it seems like you have to do 2 actions and then still spend an interact action, but that's dumb. And that literally doesn't make any sense. So it just has to be 2 for 3. It's a 2 for 3. It has to be. Please tell me that it fucking has to be. I'm still not a fan of this being locked to daggers though. Are there any DMs out there who homebrew it to be other items? Am I crazy? I really hope someone in the previous video has left a comment that dissuaded my sort of roguery ideology of the dagger that has permeated my brain from 5e. But until that moment has happened, this seems weirdly locked to a dagger and I don't like it.
Dwarven Lore. You eagerly absorbed the old stories and traditions of your ancestors, your gods, and your people, studying in subjects and techniques passed down for generation upon generation. You gained the trained proficiency rank in crafting and religion. If you would automatically become trained in one of these skills from your background or class, for example, you instead become trained in the skill of your choice. You also become trained in Dwarven Lore.
This one seems more in line with what you'd get from a traditional 5e race. Just some logical proficiencies. It's also something that pushes me to think that maybe you get these at every level, specifically because I don't know how much a couple proficiencies line up with additions to AC, or temp HP and bonuses to attack and damage. If this is a feature that I can only get at intervaled levels 1, 5, so on, this becomes lower priority for me to want to take. It doesn't seem as beneficial comparatively to some of the other ones. However, lore as a skill is fucking wild. When you click on lore, it literally takes you to a page with 37 recommendations. I felt like I was reading the side effects of some sort of pharmaceutical drug with how much nonsense was going on this page. It's not even all of them. It doesn't even take into account that people are probably homebrewing worlds that will either replace or add to this list. It's wild. And I don't know how much I like that compared to 5e. It almost feels like it's getting too specific for not really that great of a reason. And I could just be overwhelmed by the big number and my love for 5th edition simplicity. In 5e, there are just many times where it's like, oh, you're a dwarf, it makes sense for you to know this, which would just be Dwarven Lore. But instead of getting Dwarven Lore, it's just history plus dwarf knowingly in the brain equals Dwarven Lore. I don't know. I'm not sure where I stand on this. I don't hate it. I'm not against it. I just feel like it's an overspecification.
The following list covers a wide variety of common lore topics appropriate for most campaigns, but are not guaranteed.
Academia lore, accounting lore, architecture lore, art lore, circus lore, engineering lore, farming lore, fishing lore, fortune-telling lore, games lore, genealogy lore, predatory lore, guild lore, heraldry lore, herbalism lore, hunting lore, labor lore, legal lore, library lore, lore about a specific deity, lore about a specific creature or narrow category of creatures, lore about a specific plane or other material plane or the plane in which the game is set if not their material plane, lore about a specific settlement, lore about a specific terrain, lore about a type of food or drink, mercantile lore, midwifery lore, milling lore, mining lore, sailing lore, scouting lore, scribing lore, stabling lore, tanning lore, theater lore, underworld lore, warfare lore.
Not all lore is guaranteed to come with perfect results. Dwarf Weapon Familiarity. Your kin have instilled in you an affinity for hard-hitting weapons, and you prefer these to more elegant arms. You were trained with the battle axe, pick, and warhammer. You also gain access to all uncommon dwarf weapons. For the purposes of determining your proficiency, martial dwarf weapons are simple weapons and advanced dwarf weapons are martial weapons. Dwarven Weapon Familiarity leads to Dwarven Weapon Cunning, Dwarven Weapon Expertise.
This is pretty much the same as the above. It's just something very basic that I would imagine comes from 5e. However, what this does differently from the rest is the way that it scales. It doesn't necessarily scale itself, but it is the first of the features that we're reading that lead to another feature and becomes a prerequisite for that feature. We kind of see that in 5th edition with the racial feats that started to come through with Xanathar's Guide, but I don't think this is on the same level as that, because these are gimmies and feats in 5th edition are optional. Don't make them optional, just give them to your players. Just give them your fucking players. I could very easily see myself taking something like Clan's Edge at level 1, and then at level 2 or 3 taking this and sort of flavoring my character as getting into dwarven weapons along the way.
Forge Day's Rest. Your unusual rest cycle allows you to recover faster. As long as you rest for 12 hours, you gain the effects of the Fast Recovery general feat, and you can go 20 hours without resting before becoming fatigued.
What even is a rest in Pathfinder? Because the way that this reads to me is almost like trance. So is this a shorter rest or is this a long rest? I don't, long rest is a pun, I guess. I don't know. I am very confused and I'm just gonna look it up.
One Google search later.
So you don't regain full HP on a long rest. You gain your constitution modifier times your level, which is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying to me that low con characters are not healing at all for long rests. It's mind-blowing to me that if you have a 1 constitution and you don't ever increase that, even at level 20, you're only getting 20 hit points on a long rest. I know that there are some people who have their suspension of disbelief completely ripped apart by the fact that if you go to sleep in 5th edition, you heal mortal wounds. And that doesn't make any sense. It's never bothered me any, but it is also very illogical. My suspension of disbelief is fine, yours might not be. I think it's also crazy that if you're like a barbarian with a 5 in your constitution, you're gaining 50 hit points at level 10, as opposed to fucking 10. What happens if you have a 0 or a negative? Is it just automatically multiplying by 1? Or do you just multiply by 0 and get fuck all? This kind of reminds me of trance from 5th edition, which is essentially the elf's way of saying, hey, elves get to trance, they rest for half of the time that other races do. This is like the opposite. This is the inverse. Dwarves get to rest for longer. If they rest for 1.5 times what the other races do, they get twice the healing. And it does some shit with poison and disease, which I still don't know anything about, so that's cool. Either way, in the end, I really like this feature. It goes a long way in making dwarves feel like super fucking hardy, dude.
Rock Runner. Your innate connection to stone makes you adept at moving across uneven surfaces. You can ignore difficult terrain caused by rubble and uneven ground made of stone and earth. In addition, when you use the acrobatic skill to balance on narrow surfaces or uneven ground made of stone or earth, you aren't flat-footed, and when you roll a success at one of these acrobatics checks, you get a critical success instead. Rock Runner leads to Boulder Roll.
I didn't expect balance to be what it was, and I don't mean mechanical balance. I mean like the action balance. I didn't think that it would be an action that you could take. Recently in my D&D games, difficult terrain has been coming up a lot, and people have really been trying to lawyer their way through less movement being utilized. This kind of seems to be a built-in way to navigate that. Although this is one of the feats where I'm sort of realizing that if these feats do come in interval levels compared to just every level, then this one's a lot lower on the list comparatively. However, if it is every level, we're making a Dexy sexy character, bro. okay? We're taking this feat and it's gonna be great.
Stone Cunning. You have a knack for noticing even small inconsistencies in craftsmanship technique in stonework around you. You gain a +2 circumstance bonus to perception checks to notice unusual stonework. This bonus applies to checks to discover mechanical traps made of stone or hidden within stone. If you aren't using the seek action or searching, the GM automatically rolls a secret check for you to notice unusual stonework anyway. This check doesn't gain the circumstance bonus, and it takes a -2 circumstance penalty.
This is 5th edition Stone Cunning, but with extra steps. The first thing that I've noticed is that I'm really curious about passive ability scores in Pathfinder, because there's a lot of rolling in secret when it comes to the things that I have read so far. I'm starting to think that there are no passive scores for the GM to reference. There's just a lot of secret rolling that can be done. It's in this that I really appreciate the ability to blind roll to GM and Foundry. I really don't like taking that agency away from my players. One thing that this feature has done for me though, it's really reinforcing the fact that there is something roguish about dwarves. Especially with the fact that they just get some pluses to being able to find traps in stone places. And I don't know if I really like the push for roguery with a dagger and stone cunning, but then I'm reminded of something. Once again, my brain is brought back to Dragon Age, and in Dragon Age there are dwarves, and in dwarf culture and Orzammar, there's the Carda, which is a thieves guild for dwarves. And all of a sudden, this entire schism that I have in my head that dwarves aren't really the roguish archetype completely shattered. And now I kind of want to like lean into it a little bit more, because not only is it against the archetype, but it's also fucking cool. Overall though, I'm not the biggest fan of Stone Cunning in this or in 5e. I really don't like how specific it is. It sort of puts the onus on the DM to make this relevant by sending you to places where there are stone. And I don't like when it's the DM's responsibility to make relevance out of a player's choice in character creation. I think that it should be the DM's responsibility to do that, but I don't like when it does. It's a weird situation. I would much rather feats be less specific and more broad so that they can be more easily applied to situations when you're not in a fucking jungle.
Surface culture. Your interactions with other cultures on the surface have not only taught you about many other ancestries, but have also helped you realize the value of your own. You gain the trained proficiency rank in the society skill, or another skill of your choice if you were already trained in society, and you gain the additional lore skill feat for the lore corresponding to your culture.
This one's pretty basic, and it's a lot like Dwarven Lore. I'm always going to be a fan of anything that gives you more skills. I am a skill junkie. I like to be good at the things that I'm good at, and I like to be good at a lot of things. Although so far my favorite thing about this is the flavor. You're just a fucking dwarf and you've head out of your home, and now you've ventured out from your mountain and you're a little surface boil. It reminds me of Dragon Age and I love it. I don't know if it was inspired by Dragon Age, but the connections are there in my brain because I fucking love Dragon Age. It does feel a little unbalanced to me though, because it's the same thing as Dwarven Lore, but worse. Dwarven Lore gives you 2 skills, and Dwarven Lore, this gives you 1 skill and a lore that makes sense. Why make this unarguably worse than Dwarven Lore? I would just make this 2 skills, society, pick your own, and lore that befits the culture you're a part of.
Unburdened Iron.
You've learned techniques first devised by your ancestors during their ancient wars, allowing you to comfortably wear massive suits of armor. Ignore the reduction to your speed from any armor you wear. In addition, anytime you're taking a penalty to your speed from some other reason, such as from the encumbered condition or from a spell, deduct 5 feet from the penalty. For example, the encumbered condition normally gives a -10-foot penalty to speed, but it gives you only a -5-foot penalty. If your speed is taking multiple penalties, pick only 1 penalty to reduce.
Oh no. Oh no, 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 no! Don't tell me that fucking heavy armor reduces your movement speed. Don't say that. Don't write it. Take it away. Erase it. Undo. Rewind. What the fuck? You have 20 movement speed. You have 20 movement speed as a dwarf, unless there's something else in the game that gives you movement speed that isn't like an additional thing that you have to take. This feat is required. If you want to use heavy armor as a dwarf, this is a required feat so that you're not like fucking moving as if you were difficult terrain the entire time. This is ridiculous. There's no other feat that I have read so far that is a requirement to take. They're all beneficial in one way or another. Some feel more encouraging to take than others. But if you're a dwarf and you want to wear heavy armor, this feels like a requirement. And then there's the other shit. It seems weird to me that it's only 5 feet reduce instead of half. I could be overthinking it. Maybe there aren't a lot of things that reduce speed. Maybe the things that reduce speed don't reduce it by a lot. So that 5 feet reduction tends to be good. But if you're getting hit by multiple effects, it's literally, it's 5 feet. It's not even 5 feet from all of them. This is
Unburdened.
But you're kind of burdened. You're like a little burdened, right? Like it's 5 feet. You're only removing 5 feet. That's it. You're 5 feet less burdened. You're not
Unburdened.
You're
Kind of burdened.
I don't like it.
Vengeful Hatred. Your heart aches for vengeance against those who have wronged your people. Choose one of the following dwarven ancestral foes when you gain Vengeful Hatred: Drow, Duragar, Giant, or Orc. You gain a +1 circumstance bonus to damage with weapons and unarmed attacks against creatures with that trait. If your attack would deal more than 1 weapon die of damage, as is common at higher levels than first, the bonus is equal to the number of weapon dice or unarmed attack dice. In addition, if a creature critically succeeds at an attack against you and deals damage to you, you gain your bonus to damage against that creature for 1 minute, regardless of whether it has the chosen trait. Special. Your GM can add appropriate creature traits to the ancestral foes list if your character is from a community that commonly fights other types of enemies.
This is favored enemy built into a racial feat, and I like it. And it has a neat little scale mechanic, which I really didn't expect it to, considering that the first feat that we talked about didn't have that sort of scale mechanic with the damage. Plus the fact that if someone crits against you, you just get the bonus against them for a minute is really cool. I think it's something that's missing from favored enemy in 5th edition as a whole. I think that this would be really cool for a barbarian or even a paladin if there's a paladin equivalent in here. I don't know if there is. I don't think that there is. However, this is a feature that really makes me think that you're not getting them every single level, because there's a few features on this list that are too good, and then there's a lot of features on this list that are just okay. So I'm really leaning towards the fact that you're getting it at the requirement levels as opposed to anything else. That was all 10 feats for level 1. There are 22 feats between the core rulebook and the character guide, and we're going to cover the last 12 in the next video. I really love the fact that there are so many different options, especially at level 1. If you're playing a dwarf in 5e, you're getting the same thing every time with only 3 different options, being the 3 different types of dwarves. However, with Pathfinder, there's like 11 heritages that you can choose from that all give you something different. On top of that, there are 10 different level 1 features. Even at level 1, the ability to mix and match far overtakes 5e in terms of customization, and there's still 12 more just in 2 rule books, and there are so many that I just didn't even look at to keep this a sane length of a video. Every single time that you play a dwarf in Pathfinder, it could be a different experience. You could be so drastically different from your last dwarf. As someone who relishes in the familiarity of being like, oh, that's a dwarf, I know what a dwarf can do, I'm also really itching for new, fresh, and seeing a dwarf and not knowing what feats they took, what things that they can do, and just having sort of a general idea. I think that just makes a level of mystery that is not at all there into the flavor of 5th edition. I didn't realize just how much Pathfinder made it feel like there was this weight lifted off of my chest. The restrictions and lack of choice in 5e were crushing, and the openness and customization options of Pathfinder are endless. And that's it. There's no more. We're done here. This is the end of the video. Please click my face. There's a playlist here with all of the Pathfinder videos that I've made so far in the Noob Learns series, and just a random video that you might like. Okay. Goodbye. Love you. Bye. Okay, bye.